Couple programs trying to get back to relevancy in the SEC, made for an entertaining game at noon Eastern Time. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, taking in Auburn and Texas A&M gun to gun. These are my thoughts on the Tigers and the Aggies as Texas A&M controlled most of this game. Had a 10-point lead going in for 17, blew it, and lost in the final 7 minutes, 28-24. All right, I marked it down right here, 7:14 left on the clock. And as soon as it happened, put a star right by it. Kellen Mond throws the interception at the Auburn 38 with 7:14 left to play. Aggies were up 24-14. Noah Igbinije picks it off at the 38. Auburn sets up, and Gus Malzahn credit him for running the up-tempo offense. It put the Aggies on their heels defensively. They had played very well defensively the entire game. And he goes up-tempo, and really, they move down the field quickly. 5 plays, 75 yards, and they scored the touchdown to make it 24-21, and they get it right back and take it right back down the field with the same up-tempo pace to score the game-winning touchdown with about $1:45 on the clock. So Ryan Davis, after Christian Tutt returned the punt 28 yards out to the 41-yard line, Ryan Davis with a huge catch and run across the middle. He eludes tacklers. He juked everybody out on the Texas A&M defense, takes it down to the 11-yard line. And then Seth Williams with a nice extended catch in the back corner of the end zone wins it for the Auburn Tigers. Again, they come back from 24-14 down, and with Texas A&M driving, and win this one 28-24. Seth Williams only caught 2 passes on this day, and both were beauties. Both were touchdowns. The other one, Auburn's first score on the day when he plucked it away from the defensive back to get Auburn on the board again, 7-3 at that point, actually a 10-7 lead for the Auburn Tigers. Texas A&M came out pretty dominant on both sides of the ball. The defense controlled the game. They were running it with Travion Williams against what's one of the better defensive fronts in college football at Auburn. Travion Williams is a man. He's a monster. He's a tremendous player, both running and catching the ball. He totaled 88 in the first half on the ground, had a 14-yard touchdown reception that was a thing of beauty as Texas A&M with Jimbo Fisher working that screen game was extremely effective. Travion Williams finished with 107 yards rushing on only 17 carries and 75 yards passing out of the backfield. He was extremely good in this game. Kellen Mond showed us good and bad. Sophomore quarterback, again, playing one of his typical games. He misfires repeatedly and could not get Texas A&M moving on the last drive. They took over at the 15-yard line, and then Travion Williams with a little dump across the middle got it out to the 35, and they moved it out to midfield, got a pass interference penalty that set them up pretty well, although they had expired all their timeouts, had Texas A&M, and then came the holding penalty and the illegal touching and the illegal man downfield, and that backed up Texas A&M, and they were just throwing for the end zone at that point, Hail Mary style, on the final 2 plays of the game. The clock appeared to still have 1 second after the final desperation pass, but the officials decided to let it go, and the final second ticked off the clock. 28-24 ball game. Jarrett Stidham didn't look too good in this one. He did receive a pass rush. Texas A&M's defense is much better than what it was under Kevin Sumlin. We see the marked improvement offensively under Jimbo Fisher, but of course he's not happy with some of the decisions that Kellen Mond makes. He missed a wide open check down on the first series of the game in which they could have scored an easy touchdown, a walk-in. Instead, he missed it. He threw the ball out of bounds, threw it away, and Texas A&M settled for the field goal to make it 3-0 at that point. And again, Auburn plays a ton of freshmen. They get most of their productivity on offense out of freshmen. A number of metrics were shown throughout the game to show this Auburn team with all the freshmen play that they have on their roster, they could be really good going forward. But this is a lost season for both programs. none of us expected a whole lot out of Texas A&M this year. They did have the close loss, of course, to Clemson, in which they failed on the 2-point conversion. Otherwise, they could have pulled off the upset in overtime. They played to date, until possibly tonight in Death Valley, the closest game against Alabama, at least within a score into the second half. Now they're 5-4, so Texas A&M could have a dismal bowl game and kind of a lost season under Jimbo Fisher here, but things are looking on the right track at A&M. They do blow this one. It's a disappointing loss. They had the game. They were playing a much better brand of football on both sides of the ball. They controlled the game, didn't dominate it, but 10-point lead. You're driving to go ahead by 13 or 17 with under 7 minutes left. And Mon just made a horrible decision trying to throw the ball all the way across the field. It gets picked off. And then Auburn, to its credit, was pretty lackluster offensively before that, and they picked up the pace, and they moved it right down the field the last 2 possessions of the game, got the crowd behind them, and Jordan Hare turned from the doldrums into a raucous crowd that really backed the offense, and Texas A&M was on its heels, and you could just see momentum just turn around. And I'm not a big proponent of the momentum call all the time, but this one was pretty obvious. So again, Texas A&M loses this one. They dropped to 5-4. They were the highest ranked 3-loss team in the country, along with Mississippi State. They were number 20 according to the college football playoff rankings. Of course, that's no more unless they win big games down the stretch. They've got 3 home games to conclude the season. They've got Ole Miss, UAB, which you can't look past. UAB, the Blazers, only have 1 loss on the season in Conference USA, and they've got to deal with LSU at College Station to conclude the season. So you would think Texas A&M is going to win 2 of 3 and finish at 7-5 and get something like a Liberty Bowl or Birmingham Bowl bid in Jimbo Fisher's first season. Now, if they flub up against UAB or Ole Miss, then they fall even deeper in the bowl tier structure. They should finish 6-6, though. For Auburn, they're 6-3, 3-3 in the conference. They still have to play at Georgia, which the Football Power Index rates as a 14% chance of winning that game on the road in Athens against Georgia. They've got Liberty. That's a win. And then, of course, they face the best team in college football, Alabama, on the road in the Iron Bowl. Little chance of winning that game as well. So it looks like a couple 7-5 teams, maybe 6-6 teams in the case of Texas A&M, as which Auburn is right now 6-3. They get the 1 win against Liberty for sure and probably lose the other 2 games, unlike last year when they were able to beat number 1 Georgia and number 1 Alabama to work their way to the SEC championship game and get themselves a contract extension for one Gus Malzahn. I didn't understand it at the time. Give the guy a limited extension, but they broke the bank, gave him the extension, even though Auburn has basically underachieved since Gus Malzahn got them to the BCS championship game in 2013. They've been an 8-4 kind of program ever since, and they had the nice run in 3 weeks last year to get them to the SEC championship game. Otherwise, they lost 4 games and finished in the top 15 in the country. Not so much this year for Auburn, and not going to reach those heights. And we'll see what Gus Malzahn can do down the road in the rough and tumble SEC Western Division. My thoughts on Texas A&M under Jimbo Fisher. Things are looking good despite a disappointing, very disappointing loss today in Auburn, blowing that game. For Auburn, Gus Malzahn has yet to prove himself to be an elite coach. He's a good coach. He's a playmaker on offense. He's a guy that can scheme and set up matchups and scheme up the offense. But in terms of really driving the program ahead, he has failed to do so again after the big miracle turnaround in 2013 from 3-9 to a BCS championship game. My thoughts on Auburn and Texas A&M. Would love to hear what you have to say about SEC football, Texas A&M, and Auburn right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football.